Jana.
Thank you very much, Darian. And yeah, thank you, Matthias and Darian, for actually organizing this amazing event. I'm very happy to be here. And yes, I'm going to talk about open data and the potential and challenges to bring open data to rural regions in Germany. And I'm just going to quickly, I hope my internet connection is now stable, share my screen here. Just let me know if you see it, because sometimes this doesn't really work.
Yes, it works.
Oh, wonderful. It loads a bit. So yes, my talk is called From LalaLand to OpenDataLand, how to bring open data to rural regions and what's at stake if it doesn't. So I work for Neuland 21. I lead the open government program there. And we focus, in our work, we focus mainly on digital and social innovation for better quality of living in rural areas. And that includes best practice mapping, trend mapping, innovation research, concept and project development, education for regional stakeholders. We are a non-profit organization. We were founded in 2017. We work Germany-wide and for model projects mainly in the Eastern German federal states and structurally more weak regions in the Western federal states. Just kind of, we have just, yeah, you can see the map. We have just opened an office in Bad Belzig-Brandenburg, which is about 90k southwest of Berlin, and maybe 1 hour drive by car from Potsdam, the federal capital of Brandenburg. Currently, we have like a train strike, so it's all a bit longer these days. Neuland 21 is also focusing on topics like new concepts of living in the countryside. How do we work in the future? Economy, education, innovative administration, local supply chains, but also mobility. And the government, the open government team that I lead, and I'm not really sure if you are familiar with open government, it means how to make the administration and the government more transparent and more democratic. And we currently work on 2 projects. One is an open government project that implement these often very abstract ideas of open government on the local level. We work around digital participation, citizen-generated data, and the attempt to foster an open data culture in Bad Belzig. And the other one is the project that I'm going to talk about. It's called Open Data for Rural Regions, Opportunities, Challenges, and the Legal Economic Design. Short version is OpenDataLand, and it's funded by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture here in Germany. Before I dive in describing our goals or research questions and first findings, I just want to talk about 2 examples I came across recently to give you an idea why we are actually thinking of bringing open data to the countryside. These are typical situations that you probably came across as well. So there is no surprise here. The first one is infrastructure planning in the countryside. What you see on the left-hand side is what I think was once a healthy and well-structured cycling path in the local district where I'm from, in the southwest of Germany. I was cycling there once, and all of a sudden these pollards were there. And I couldn't really figure out why they were there, because other than please dismount your bicycle, there were no clues, or there was no explanation why all of a sudden out of the blue these pollards were there. And also these 2 pollards in the middle, they made the situation a bit more dangerous, because there's a slight corner to the left, so it narrows the cycling path. You have to maneuver, and the other people that approach you, they don't really know what they await just around the corner. So I was just curious, because these just seem so randomly put there, and I couldn't really find a heat map based on open data, on accident statistics, all I found was a very meek and not very insightful article on why these were put there. And they're still there, actually. The reason was there were always erosions at this kind of stretch of the cycling path. And there was a construction site, and to safeguard cyclists, they just put up these pollards there. But it never really, I could never really figure out what it really was that would actually safeguard people from a landslide here. And it just made the whole situation a bit more dangerous than it actually is. The second picture shows a shooting range outside of Bad Belzig. It's situated at the kind of edge of the city, but it's still close enough to kind of cause friction between residents and the owner of this shooting range. And there have been noise complaints for so many years now. The residents say it's too loud. The owner says, no, it's all within the allowed noise range. And then someone from the local district shows up just to measure the noise over a very overseeable period of time. Also, this person always shows up announced, so the owner knows what to do or not to do. But what we don't have is like a solid database that informs or creates an informed discussion of whether this shooting range should be maybe moved more towards the north, which has been discussed for a very long time. And this is a typical talk of the town topic that turns into one of these more toxic identification topics for citizens. And it seems to never end. And of course, it would be very easy just to install noise sensors for a longer period of time to enable an informed discussion. But this is currently not happening. And this is going to be, continue to be a bitter discussion between owner and local authorities and the residents. So when we started our research, we quickly realized that there is already what seems to be like a urban-rural gap when it comes to open data. Only 5 of the rural districts in Germany have an open data website in comparison to the 43 of the bigger cities. And no one really knows what the countryside needs. The scientific debate is limited right now to urban examples, and these findings cannot necessarily be transferred into rural areas. So we all agree, most of us, that open data is an important field for any municipality, but municipalities in the rural areas of Germany are threatened to lose out on topics of digitalization or innovation, or even taking good care of their citizens. And yeah, that's a huge problem. So we have 3 research questions for the project. And one which is the unofficial one, and which we don't quantify right now. The first one is potential. What's the potential of open data to benefit living conditions in rural areas? The second one, what are the particular challenges with regard to actually implementing what we call a open data culture, meaning not only open up data, but also foster a lively community around it. And what are the ideal legal pricing and organizational frameworks for these rural municipalities to actually open up data? We also have a 4th one, which I'm going to talk about later. What's at stake if open data doesn't become a tale of the countryside? And so far, it's only a success story of the cities. And but yeah, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But before we can actually answer these questions, we needed to have a closer look of what is actually there when it comes to open data in the countryside, in these rural areas we are talking about. Do we just have a gut feeling, or yeah, is there any open data activity that we have overlooked or has been overlooked by the conventional or the already known research that has been done? So we started this research project last year in April 2020, and we set out to really scrutinize Germany, actually. And we started from the bottom, from a federal level down to a federal state level, to a local level. We kind of looked into into every local district there is, if there is any open data activity, or at least data activity. And what we found is, well, you can be hopeful about it, but you don't have to be like, well, there is hope. Let's put it like that. We only found 69 open data portals, and of those 69 open data portals in these rural regions, many of them were just digital ruins, just a few data sets, sometimes on a local website. It was no longer updated data. So we found like very heartwarming examples of, for example, this one guy who is a wine grower had taken an interest in open data and just opened up some municipal data sets himself. But that was a hobby and he couldn't really sustain it for long. So he went back to wine growing, I guess. But with the 96 geodata portals we found, this is a good sign, because geodata is always a trailblazer for open data. And it's a good sign because there is data infrastructure, there's data knowledge, there's data skill. And the people who work with geodata, they're not afraid of actually then also maybe turn to open data portals. So yeah, there are more geodata portals, and many open data portals are one-off actions. And we also didn't find an open data community. We couldn't identify or find one, and that is a huge problem if you really want to make open data access. Doesn't really matter where. And that's what cities had the advantage of having universities, of having digital agencies like Superdot. So you actually create like walk-ins for engaging with open data. The demand is much higher, and that is of course not really happening in the countryside. People are just not really interested in engaging with data. When we talked to experts, we identified some best practice portals. The reason why open data hadn't taken the countryside yet, these reasons are not very different from the stories we hear from the cities. It's like lack of human resources, digital skills, and lack of data imagination in the specialized offices. There's a lack of knowledge about user groups, assumed needs, and no organizational process. And I would also add, we currently in Germany, we have a patchwork of a legal framework. So there are many uncertainties within local communities on under which legal framework actually to open up data. And that, of course, leads people to refrain actually to do it at all. No one wants to, kind of have a legal dispute over that. And with these challenges, we've identified, of course, there are so many solutions, like change management, best practice sharing, target group segmentation. It all sounds very great when you kind of read it, but of course, those of you who have worked with open data, it's not that simple, just kind of to break the bottleneck. So every time I talk to open data experts, in more like in a dialogue workshop or anything, it almost feels like you're being in a hurt locker, or it's a group therapy, because there's so much frustration sometimes, a lot of hurt, and over analyzing the situations, and everyone has written down something that could be the next big thing that brings open data solution to every corner of the country. Yeah, and if you present these solutions, you just sometimes just get a pitiful look, because they have been doing that. And I thought for this talk, maybe I just don't end my presentation with these are the solutions for you, but maybe try to find different action modes, maybe also something as a take-home action plan for some of you out there. And these are take-home action points. So what can you do? Because there's a lot of at stake if open data doesn't reach the countryside. For example, digital conservatism instead of digital innovation, or that current crisis situations are just being managed the way they have been managed over the last 30 years by gut feeling and bad and data-deprived decision-making. And we have just seen it this year. I mean, faxing COVID stats to the Robert Koch Institute is no longer working, and not really using data that has already been collected to make better infrastructure planning is no longer working. And the municipalities are the first one that have to face the immense changes like climate change, catastrophe. These are no longer the topics of the future, they're already happening today. So if we consider open data as a right of the citizens, I suggest just call your local MP, just inquire, hey, what's your stand on open data, pros and cons? Oh, you don't know what open data is? Why don't you check out this incredible website from Neuland 21? They have done some amazing work there, I think. And or even better, have a call, lobby for open data in your local community. The second one is talk possibility, not data. I have the feeling that many people are overwhelmed when they hear about open data for the first time because they are being confronted with metadata and standards and this and that, and the data sucks and I can't download it, etc. But I think we have a lot of designers among the audience as well. We should talk possibility more. We should find creative ways to actually make the benefit of open data more visible. For example, you never really find open data on Instagram. And I think it should really also reach Instagram as like campaigns that promote the benefits of open data. Yeah, just wonderful pictures of good infrastructure, best practices, where you can really see happened or powered with open data, or worst case scenario pictures of bad infrastructure, and then you just say wouldn't have happened with open data. Because I think that's what people really need. They need to have a tangible approach of what the possibilities are and not just data. The third one is don't make open data bigger than it is. I always have the feeling that open data is used with these big analogies. It's like the new oil, the new gold, the new whatever. And it's, you know, water, which is going to dry up soon, which is the scary part. And there's always also a bit of a mystery around open data, which is weird. But open data is just content, and we should treat it like content as well. I think I've never met anyone who is afraid of the content of a well-maintained website of a local administration. And the same goes for open data. I think it's very important to demystify open data, because it's not rocket science, and we have the standards, we have the infrastructure, and we have the experts. I mean, we are 10 years into the discussion, and so much has happened. And this also needs to be happening in the countryside. And the fourth one is start your own initiative. If you are of the opinion that there is not enough open data out there, which there isn't, there are so many creative ways to actually engage and make this topic more, just raise the, how do you say, the attention of the people and really make it clear that it's important that they actually have open data, like open an OK lab, do a open air exhibition, and just get people together in your local community to actually talk about open data, like hands-on. And for fifth but not least, we currently look, and this goes out to the German-speaking audience, who has one of two of you have a academic background or research background. We are currently looking for support for this project. So if you're interested for doing paid work when it comes to open data, please ping me. Thank you very much. Thanks again for organizing this, and looking forward what Matteo and Matthias have to say.